Welcome back, guys, to my long-awaited class guide for the Robotics Expert. I've been promising this one for a couple of weeks, so let's get into it. Thank you for suggesting this class, it was a blast to play. I'm going to cover everything there is to know about playing the Robotics Expert, covering the loadout, the skill cards, perks, and finish with a couple of builds for you. I do have a playlist in the top right of this video that will cover 13 of the other classes from Gears 5, but please note that my guides are aimed at players a bit newer to Gears, so if you are a hardcore fan, you may already know all of this, but sit back, have a little bit of patience, you may even learn something new. The Robotics Expert is one of the main engineer classes in Gears 5, with a slight blend of a marksman playstyle. You will mostly be buying fortifications to defend your teammates while slowing down or completely stopping enemies in their tracks, and taking your targets out from a distance, assuming your teammates or sentries don't do it first. You are going to start every match with an M-bar, overkill, and repair tool. This loadout is ideal for the Robotics Expert, however you decide to play this class, as you get a lot of benefits from using DB and precision weapons. Let's cover this class's ultimate ability next, Reinforce DR1. This will simply summon a DR1 unit wielding a tri-shot in front of you that will taunt nearby enemies to attack it whilst fighting back. If you happen to mark a target whilst this unit is active, your DR1 will focus this enemy. Sometimes the AI for this DR1 can be awkward and just stand there, whilst other times it will mow down enemy after enemy. It's not a bad idea to summon this behind a bit of cover or some barriers to give it time to kill a few enemies, or at least distract them for long enough so that your teammates can take them out. When there are no enemies around, the DR1 will simply follow you. Reinforced DR1 will last for a whopping 40 seconds and will cool down after 300 seconds or 5 minutes. Onto the passive for the Robotics Expert. This class will be able to build all fortifications for 15% cheaper and be able to carry them around faster than any other non-engineer class. So if you aren't playing as this class or any of the other engineer classes, just leave them to build your base. They can do it much better and cheaper than any other class. With the basic loadout out of the way, we'll look at the skill cards this class has available to it. To unlock more of these skill cards, you will need to level the class up. I show this chart in every one of my class guides, which shows all the level requirements for all classes in Gears 5. As you make more levels, you unlock more new cards and extra card slots to put these in. Getting to level 9 with any class is your first major milestone, as this is when you unlock all your card slots. If you happen to play Gears 5 previously, and the level up bared when classes were attached to characters, then all the experience you had on him will have been transferred to the Robotics Expert. As I promised, skill cards. I'll go over each individual card in as much detail as I can, and the best ways to use it. The Robotics Expert has 17 different skill cards, so this shouldn't take too long to cover. Score Boost is the standard card that all classes start out with. It's your choice to use it or not. It will only improve your score in Horde or Escape, and you aren't going to be making any high leaderboard ranks at rank 1. This card doesn't do anything for your experience gains. I made a video recently covering this as well, and I'll link it in the top right if you are interested in that. Enforcer Porting is the next card. Not a bad card, but you don't start with this weapon, and the recoil on this can be easy enough to control once you get used to it. Use it for now, as it's better than having nothing equipped. At level 3, Inspired Sniping is unlocked, along with your second card slot. Getting your ultimate ability back faster is always good, and this helps with that. For me, the value is far too low, as a single long shot active reload headshot will give you back almost 23 seconds on its own. So what is an extra 1 to 1.5 seconds going to achieve? Granted, the more consecutive headshots you hit, the higher this value becomes, but Horde can get a bit chaotic at times and everyone misses their shots. Use it for now, but we will be swapping it out. Your first engineer style card is unlocked next, Combat Engineer. At first it doesn't do anything, but if you are repairing any single fortification for 2 seconds, after that 2 seconds you'll start to repair much faster as long as you don't stop or start to repair something else. This card starts out at 100%, which doubles your repair speed, and at max rank you repair more than 4 times faster, which is perfect for those fortifications that take a long time to fix. At level 5, when you unlock your 3rd card slot, you will also unlock Explosive Kill Shot. This just causes a small explosion around enemies you kill that are down but not out. It's okay, the damage isn't overwhelming and the blast radius is kinda small, but your sentries are also able to proc this. Speaking of sentries, Global Sentry Upgrade is next to be unlocked. This will give all MG sentry guns on the map a damage boost, regardless of who builds them. This does not affect shock sentries, but the damage boost is still nice, and very noticeable on level 3 and 4 sentry turrets. Unlocking your 3rd card slot will also unlock melee resistance. It wouldn't be gears without some defense cards thrown in. Anyway, this just gives the Robotics expert a small amount of resistance from all melee damage sources. Can be useful on easier difficulties, but is completely pointless on insane or above, as all melees will still put you down in one hit. Next up, more defense with heavy resistance. The exact same values and use as melee resistance, but against heavy weapons. May be worth using on easier difficulties again, but you will still be shredded by heavy weapons on insane or higher. Hitting level 9 will unlock your final card slot and Nerves of Steel. This card will also increase your repair speed when there is at least one nearby enemy. Can be useful to help save fortifications that enemies are stuck on, which have taken a beating. Usually it's just easier to kill the enemy and then repair if needed. Personal choice on this one really. The next card we have access to is Bloody Support. This will cause enemies to bleed from your precision weapon shots for a certain percent of the damage dealt, only when your reinforced DR1 ultimate is ready to use. There's a lot going on with this card. Not being able to use your ultimate but causing extra bleeding damage is nice. The damage is a bit low. If you don't ever really use your ultimate ability as this class, it can be worth equipping this card. Next up is Precision Repairs. This is a great skill card that rewards good sniping ability. Every time you get a kill, doesn't even have to be a headshot. All the fortifications on the map will heal for a certain amount of health. If you plan on using this card, aim to take out weaker enemies like Juvies, Leeches, Shepherds, Imagos, that sort of thing. That way you get a bunch of free repairs, saving a lot of energy. 3 things I want to point out with this card though. The free repair will not refill ammo for any kind of sentry gun. If you hit an enemy with a precision weapon whilst using the Bloody Support skill card and the bleed kills them, this bleed kill does not count and won't heal your fortifications. And this card does not heal energy taps, so you will still need to repair those manually. Other than that, it's a great card that can be used at any difficulty. Experimental Weapons is the next card to unlock. You will receive this when you get to level 12, and it will increase your damage significantly when using DB weapons, but only against targets below 50% health. The damage buff is nice and does count for a lot of weapons, including the tri-shot and salvo. Definitely worth using if you plan on being more damage focused. However, this does not buff the damage from your DR1's tri-shot, just so you know. Up next is Parting Gift. I completely forgot this was even a card, as I have never considered it, and will never consider it. It might sound like I'm being harsh, but if you get close enough to take a meat shield in Horde, you probably won't remember to stick it with a grenade and kick it away. This card would work better on someone else like the Slugger. It's a bit of a waste on the Robotics expert. Epic Score Boost is next. This is a higher rarity and gives better values than the standard Score Boost card. It also acts the exact same way, only boosting your score in Horde or Escape, and still does nothing for experience gains. Most people will never use this. We are going to unlock another engineer based card at the next level, Global Overclock. This card will cause all weapons lockers, even if you don't build them, to restore ammo faster. If you aren't the engineer, but you're playing this class, this card is a great way to support your team without really doing anything. Now it's time to go over the Robotics Expert's gold card, Bloody DR1. This will cause your reinforced DR1 to cause bleeding damage, and quite a lot of it. The damage of this card is incredible, and the long duration of the ultimate makes it worthwhile. However, if you are using the Bloody Support card from earlier, it's kind of counterintuitive to use this as well. I do highly recommend both bleeding cards for this class. You won't have 100% use out of both of them at the same time, so you need to find a good balance between them. The final skill card we have left to cover for the Robotics expert is Homebody. This will grant damage resistance against everything when within 10 meters of an energy tap. Not a bad idea for a card, and the damage resistance does stack multiplicatively with the other 2 resistance cards this class has, but like those, this card is only good at lower levels, as you still get killed very quickly on the harder difficulties. Plus, taps don't always spawn in the best locations, so there is some RNG involved with this card. That is everything for skill cards. Now, let's cover the perks this class has available to use. All classes in Gears 5 have access to 4 different perks in Horde matches. These perks can be leveled up by spending energy, costing more and more with each level, but also grant bigger bonuses. Each perk costs 24,250 energy to max out, so it can get very expensive. The Robotics expert has Fortification health, which just gives all fortifications you build more health. Fortification damage, which just increases the damage output of all fortifications you build, most useful for sentries and barriers. Repair cost, which will save you energy in the long run if you do happen to do a lot of manual repairs. Last is critical damage. This just increases the damage of your critical hits, like headshots, with any weapon. Those are the perks, and now I've got every single value of these perks for you here. With all the skill cards and perks out of the way, we can move on to the builds I would recommend for this class. Only the 2 today. The first will focus on being your team's engineer, building a base, keeping it healthy, so that your teammates can dish out the damage. And the second one would be your best damage setup for this class. Here are the skill cards I want to suggest for the first build. Global Overclock is here first, as weapon lockers are a must for some classes, and they will always generally help your team beat all 50 waves much easier. These can even help yourself when it comes to the rest of this build. Precision Repairs is essentially free energy in Horde mode. If you kill even 1 or 2 enemies in each wave, that is usually more than enough to keep most of your fortifications at maximum health. The only thing you have left to repair between waves are energy taps and refilling ammo on any sentries you may have. Speaking of sentries, Global Sentry Upgrade is a great card to help you deal even more damage. All your MG sentry guns will deal more damage with this card equipped, but remember that bastions are a counter to this, so deal with them as quickly as possible. And the last card I would recommend is Bloody Support. Earlier on I mentioned how this card's bleeding damage does not heal fortifications if you get a kill with it, but I do appreciate the extra damage this provides. It's not too overpowered and it is a decent option, but you could just as easily take Bloody DR1 instead for some bleeding damage, if you prefer it that way. We have a single option slot at the end for you. As I mentioned, Bloody DR1 can be used if you prefer. Experimental Weapons is a decent option that directly affects the M bar, so if you prefer using this weapon, it can do almost as much damage as a long shot, but I usually just prefer the latter. Nerves of Steel can be used, however it's not a good option to be close to enemies, especially on harder difficulties. And Combat Engineer, my personal preference. This will just increase your repair speed dramatically, useful for fortifications with a lot of health, and works just as well on energy taps. In terms of perks, I would suggest critical damage first, then fortification damage, follow this with fortification health, and finally do repair cost. You will be the person getting a base together for your team, so you'll spend a lot of time moving fortifications around, repairing and refilling sentries, but make sure you get a few precision weapons in during each wave to get those free repairs on everything you build. You can choose to use your reinforced DR1 as a decoy every now and again, but the DR1 can be killed quite easily. Pair this kind of build with someone else playing Jack, and they can provide even more energy for you to spend. Good damage dealers are also needed, regardless of who they are. Just make sure you can provide them with weapon lockers, and you'll easily soar through 50 waves. Time for the second build I want to suggest for the Robotics expert. This is going to be your best damage setup for this class using the following skill cards. Bloody DR1 and Bloody Support are here to have you deal as much bleeding damage as possible. Problem is that these 2 cards counteract each other a little bit. You want to keep your ultimate ready to use so you benefit from the bloody support card, which is fine, and then use your ultimate in emergencies or tense situations as a decoy or extra damage. If you pair this with inspired sniping and you are a great shot, you can get your reinforced DR1 back very quickly between uses, having almost no downtime on either of these cards. Experimental weapons is also here for the extra damage this provides. This extra damage affects the overkill, shot grenades, enforcer, tri-shot, salvo and M-bar. So if you use nothing but these weapons, you are going to be able to put out a lot of damage. An option slot once again for you. Precision repairs can be useful if you want to provide some support to your engineer whilst passively fighting. Explosive kill shot is an option to deal that little bit of area damage should you have a lot of enemies grouped up. The last option I would suggest is enforcer porting. It doesn't deal any extra damage, but the quality of life recoil reduction is nice enough. Now, the perk order. I would start leveling up critical damage first, and that's it. You can leave the rest of the perks alone as they aren't really useful here. Maybe consider repair cost later on if your main engineer needs help repairing stuff manually. This kind of playstyle isn't as powerful as the marksman or nomad, as they are much better snipers and can do a lot more damage. But I would recommend precision repairs above any of the other skill cards in the option slot to make this kind of build even remotely useful. This will make you more of a supportive role, like the way the combat medics can use their ultimate to heal fortifications. As always, this class works well with the veteran. A free aimbot makes headshots much easier, and with that, free healing. Any other class that can provide some stim to you is also a good option, as you cannot generate this yourself. So a combat medic or anchor are also great to help keep you alive for longer. As the robotics expert is one of the main engineer classes of Gears 5, I thought it would be best to quickly go over all the different fortifications in Horde as well. There are 8 different fortifications you will find in Horde mode, and I'm going to cover everything I know about each of them. Barriers are up first. These are used to either slow down or completely stop enemies from getting close to you. You should be seeing in the footage on screen what these look like, along with their health and cost. As you level barriers up, they get more health and go from slowing enemies to stopping them completely. Level 1 and 2 barriers will only slow enemies whilst damaging them, whereas level 3 and 4 will completely stop them. You will build plenty of these playing Horde, and they are best placed in narrow hallways or several other larger areas to slow groups of enemies down. Barriers are quite sturdy on their own, but they usually aren't enough to kill enemies, so have something or someone nearby to help take these enemies out. Next up are decoys. These are just a simple fortification, very underused in my opinion, but they will taunt nearby enemies to attack them, taking the aggro away from your team. You should be seeing what they look like on screen, along with their health and cost. As decoys are leveled up, they get more health, and at level 4 get a lovely surprise. If a level 4 decoy is destroyed, it will explode on death, dealing heavy damage to anything around it. Place these behind barriers or cover, and again have someone or something nearby to take out any enemies that are trying to kill your decoy, as they are defenseless on their own. Sentry guns are the third fortification we'll go over. These are used to gun down anything that gets too close. These will be a big damage boost to you as the engineer, but remember to build a little bit of everything and not too many of any single thing. On screen you should be seeing what sentry guns look like at their different levels, along with their health and cost. As they level up, they gain more health, more ammo, deal more damage, and have a longer and wider cone of vision. Check on these regularly to refill their ammo when they need it. Without, it's just a useless decoy. Our next fortification is shock sentries. These are another powerful sentry that you will use to deal damage and provide some long range crowd control. This is what they look like at different levels, along with the health and cost again. As these are leveled up, they gain more health, ammo, deal more damage, and get a longer and wider cone of vision, much like the machine gun sentry guns. These are powerful enough to kill smaller enemies in 1 to 2 hits, and even slow down bigger enemies like wardens and DR1s. Make sure you place these behind barriers, pointing towards the enemy, and refill their ammo whenever they run out. Weapon lockers are up next. These are a very supportive fortification that are used to save weapons for later use, whilst restoring the ammo for them. Leveling up weapons lockers will allow you to store more weapons simultaneously, restore ammo faster, and gives the locker more health. You should be seeing what these look like on screen now, with their health and cost values. It's usually a good idea to point this out, but a lot of classes can make use of these. I mentioned this in my mechanic video, and stated that one level 4 weapon locker is usually more than enough for most classes, and that is still the case. If you require more than one, you might not be playing your class that well, especially with how quickly these things regenerate ammo, especially with the overclocked locker skill card equipped. The last buildable fortification we will go over is the Forge. Only build this if you have someone playing Jack on your team. Without him, it is not optimal and it will be a waste of energy. Also, never build more than one of these. I'm showing multiple on screen in the footage, just to show you the difference with what they look like. The Forge will provide energy to your team as you feed it weapons. Different weapons give different amounts of energy, but without Jack's optimizer skill card, it's not worth doing. As you level up the Forge, it will get even more health, and give more energy back for the weapons you feed it. Now we have two more fortifications, but these simply aren't built like everything else I've covered. The first thing is technically the Fabricator itself. This is your main tool for building fortifications, reviving dead teammates, and buying weapons. Without it, you aren't that useful. The Fabricator cannot be leveled up and can still be destroyed. If it is destroyed, it would cost 4,000 energy to get back, so place this near the back of your base and make sure it stays healthy. The last thing we must cover are the energy taps. You will have up to 4 of these spawn randomly throughout the map, and they take about 10 seconds to capture. Once captured, they have a health bar like everything else, but if they are destroyed, you simply need to recapture them. If they survive the wave, you'll be rewarded with some energy to claim from them, and they will level up. These can get to a maximum level of 4 and provide more and more energy with each level. They will also provide your team with a percentage health bonus up to a maximum of 25% per tap. Some of the spawns of these are a bit difficult to defend, but if you manage it, you are well rewarded for it. There's one last thing left to cover for the robotics expert, so with everything else out of the way, we can look at the heroic Venom weapon skin for the M-Bar rifle. You will be rewarded with this for getting the robotics expert to level 20. That is everything I can possibly think of to cover for this class. This turns out to be quite a long video, but the robotics expert is a decent hybrid class that mixes an engineer with a marksman role, and it does it quite well. If you like this video, please go ahead and subscribe and leave a like on the video. Or if you think I missed out anything important, please leave it in a comment below. With all that out of the way, I'm not going to drag this on any longer. We'll leave it here for this one. Have an awesome day, gears, and I will see you in the next one.